The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of St. Vincent's Hospital, casting soft golden rays on the polished floors. The hospital buzzed with its usual rhythm, nurses rushing down corridors, doctors flipping through charts, and patients waiting anxiously in their rooms. Among them was Nurse Maya Johnson, a dedicated professional whose warm smile could brighten even the gloomiest days. Known for her compassion and efficiency, Maya had become a beloved figure at the hospital over the years. But today, little did she know it would be anything but ordinary. Maya adjusted her scrubs as she walked briskly toward room 304, where her first patient of the day awaited. She carried a clipboard tucked under one arm and a stethoscope draped around her neck. Her dark hair was neatly tied back, and though she looked calm on the outside, inside she felt the familiar rush that came with every new shift. It wasn't just about administering medicine or checking vitals. It was about making people feel seen and cared for when they needed it most. As she approached the room, she noticed Dr. Gregory Caldwell already there. He stood by the bed, his white coat crisp and his posture rigid. Dr. Caldwell was infamous among the staff, not because of his medical expertise, which was undeniable, but because of his abrasive demeanor. He often spoke condescendingly to nurses, dismissing their input during rounds and treating them more like assistants than equals. And unfortunately for Maya, he seemed particularly irritable this morning. "Ah, here we are," Dr. Caldwell said without looking up as Maya entered the room. His tone dripped with sarcasm. "Finally decided to join us, Nurse Johnson?" Maya froze for a split second before stepping forward with practiced professionalism. "Good morning, doctor," she replied calmly, ignoring the jab. "I'm here to assist with Mr. Thompson's evaluation." Mr. Thompson, the patient lying in the bed, gave a weak smile. He appeared frail, his hands resting gently on the blanket covering him. Despite his condition, his eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Morning, ma'am," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of southern charm. "Don't mind him. I reckon everyone's got their quirks." Dr. Caldwell shot Mr. Thompson a sharp glance, clearly unamused by the comment. Then, turning back to Maya, he continued in a clipped tone. "Let's get one thing straight, nurse. Johnson, this is my case, and I expect things to run smoothly. No distractions, no mistakes." Maya nodded politely, refusing to let his words rattle her. Over the years, she'd learned how to navigate difficult personalities while keeping her focus on what truly mattered: the patient. Still, something about Dr. Caldwell's attitude today felt especially grating. Perhaps it was the way he barely acknowledged her presence, speaking over her as if she were invisible. Or maybe it was the dismissive flick of his hand when she tried to offer an update on Mr. Thompson's overnight vitals. "Excuse me, doctor," Maya interjected firmly but respectfully. "I was just going to mention that Mr. Thompson's blood pressure readings have improved slightly since last night. I thought you might want to review them before proceeding." For a moment, Dr. Caldwell paused, his jaw tightening. Then, with exaggerated patience, he turned to face her. "Nurse Johnson," he began, his voice loud enough to echo slightly in the small room. "I don't need you to tell me how to do my job. That's why you take orders, not give them. Understood?" The room fell silent. Even the faint hum of machines seemed to quieten. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. She glanced briefly at Mr. Thompson, who looked increasingly uncomfortable, shifting slightly in his bed. For all his frailty, there was a keen intelligence behind his gaze, as if he were studying the situation carefully. "Yes, doctor," Maya replied evenly, choosing her battles wisely. But as Dr. Caldwell resumed his examination, neither Maya nor the doctor realized that Mr. Thompson was far from being just another patient. Unbeknownst to them, this encounter would set off a chain of events neither of them could have anticipated, and leave both of them forever changed. As Dr. Caldwell continued his examination, the tension in room 304 remained thick enough to cut with a knife. Mr. Thompson lay quietly on the bed, observing everything with sharp eyes that belied his frail appearance. Though he said nothing more after Dr. Caldwell's outburst, it was clear he wasn't merely a passive observer. Every movement of his fingers against the blanket, every thoughtful glance between Maya and the doctor, suggested he was piecing together the dynamics of the room like a puzzle. Dr. Caldwell rattled off instructions to Maya as if she were an errand runner rather than a skilled professional. "Fetch me the latest lab results," he barked over his shoulder while scribbling notes on Mr. Thompson's chart. "And make sure they're accurate this time." His tone carried a dismissive edge, implying past errors without evidence. Maya clenched her jaw briefly before replying, "Of course, doctor." She turned to leave but paused when Mr. Thompson spoke up unexpectedly. "Excuse me, Doc," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "If it's not too much trouble, could you explain what all these tests are for? I'm trying to understand my condition better." Dr. Caldwell froze mid-sentence, clearly unaccustomed to patients questioning him. After a beat, he plastered on a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Thompson, don't concern yourself with the details. You're in good hands here." "That may be true," Mr. Thompson replied evenly, "but understanding my own health feels important to me. Call it curiosity, if you will." The subtle challenge in his words hung in the air. Dr. Caldwell hesitated, then launched into a rushed explanation, using complex medical jargon that seemed designed to confuse rather than clarify. As he spoke, Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, though his expression hinted at skepticism. When the doctor finally finished, Mr. Thompson simply said, "Thank you kindly," leaving both Maya and Dr. Caldwell unsure whether he'd truly understood, or if he was playing along. Once Dr. Caldwell excused himself to attend to another patient, Maya returned to the room with the requested lab results. She found Mr. Thompson staring out the window, lost in thought. Sensing his reflective mood, she approached gently. "Is there anything else I can do for you, Mr. Thompson?" He turned to her with a warm smile. "You've already done plenty, ma'am. But tell me, how long have you worked here?" "About 8 years now," Maya replied, surprised by the question. "Why do you ask?" Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "Just curious. It takes grit to stick around a place like this. Not everyone has it. From what I've seen today, you've got plenty of it." His kind words caught Maya off guard, and she felt a lump form in her throat. In her line of work, gratitude wasn't uncommon, but hearing such heartfelt appreciation from someone who'd witnessed her mistreatment made it especially meaningful. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That means a lot." Before either of them could say more, the door swung open and Dr. Caldwell reappeared, looking even more harried than before. "Nurse Johnson," he snapped, "we need to prep Mr. Thompson for his next procedure immediately. Stop wasting time chatting." Maya bit back a retort and focused on the task at hand. As she helped adjust Mr. Thompson's IV line, she noticed him watching Dr. Caldwell closely, his expression unreadable. There was something almost calculating in his gaze, as if he were assessing the man beyond his white coat and title. Later that afternoon, during a brief lull in her duties, Maya sat at the nurse's station reviewing charts. Her mind kept drifting back to Mr. Thompson. Something about him felt different, more than just his polite demeanor or keen intellect. It was as if he carried a quiet authority, one that hadn't fully revealed itself yet. Little did Maya know, her instincts were right. Unbeknownst to anyone at St. Vincent's Hospital, Mr. Thompson wasn't just any patient. He was Lawrence Thompson III, a retired hospital administrator and philanthropist whose contributions had shaped healthcare policies across the country. And though he rarely discussed his past publicly, he still believed in holding those in power accountable, especially when it came to treating others with dignity and respect. By the end of the day, whispers began circulating among the staff about why Mr. Thompson had chosen St. Vincent's for treatment. Some speculated it was because of its reputation for excellence. Others joked it might be random chance. But none of them realized that Lawrence Thompson had walked into the hospital with a purpose, one that would soon shake things up in ways no one anticipated. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with its usual flurry of activity. Nurses rushed. Between rooms, doctors huddled in corners discussing cases, and patients waited anxiously for updates on their conditions. But amidst the chaos, one name lingered quietly on everyone's lips: Mr. Thompson. While most staff members were curious about his presence at St. Vincent's, No one suspected the depth of his intentions, not even Nurse Maya Johnson. Maya started her shift by checking on Mr. Thompson as she always did. She entered his room to find him sitting up in bed, reading a worn, leather-bound book. He looked up when she approached, his eyes twinkling behind his glasses. "Morning, ma'am," he greeted her warmly. "I was wondering if you'd have time to explain something to me today." "Of course, Mr. Thompson," Maya replied, smiling despite the weight of yesterday's events still lingering in her mind. "What would you like to know?" "Well," he began thoughtfully, closing his book and setting it aside. "I've been hearing bits and pieces about how this hospital operates. Some folks seem mighty proud of their work here, while others—" He trailed off, glancing toward the door where Dr. Caldwell had stormed out earlier that day. "Aren't quite so considerate." Maya hesitated, unsure how to respond. Talking about workplace dynamics with a patient felt unprofessional, especially given the circumstances. But there was something disarming about Mr. Thompson, an air of wisdom that made her feel safe confiding in him. "It's complicated," she said. Finally, "we all want what's best for our patients, but sometimes personalities clash." Mr. Thompson nodded knowingly. "Happens everywhere, doesn't it? Still, respect costs nothing, and neither does kindness." His words carried a quiet authority, leaving Maya to wonder if he was speaking from personal experience. Later that afternoon, during rounds, Dr. Caldwell once again took center stage in Mr. Thompson's room. This time, however, the atmosphere felt different. Instead of passively listening, Mr. Thompson peppered the doctor with questions, each one polite yet probing. "And how does this medication interact with my other prescriptions?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "I assume you've reviewed them thoroughly?" Dr. Caldwell bristled visibly. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. I assure you, everything is under control." "I see," Mr. Thompson replied smoothly. "Just making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Can't be too careful, can we?" As the exchange continued, Maya watched silently from the corner of the room. She couldn't help but notice how Dr. Caldwell grew increasingly flustered under Mr. Thompson's scrutiny. It was subtle but unmistakable, a bead of sweat forming on his forehead, his clipped answers growing shorter with each question. After the doctor left in a huff, Maya stepped forward to check Mr. Thompson's vitals. "You really gave him a run for his money just now," she remarked lightly, trying to keep the mood light. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "Sometimes people need a little nudge to remember what truly matters. Don't you think?" Before Maya could respond, a knock sounded at the door. A young intern poked her head inside, looking nervous. "Excuse me, Nurse Johnson, but Dr. Caldwell wants to see you in his office right away." Maya's stomach tightened. She glanced at Mr. Thompson, who offered an encouraging nod. "Go on, ma'am. You'll handle it just fine." With a deep breath, Maya headed to Dr. Caldwell's office. When she arrived, she found him pacing behind his desk, his face flushed with frustration. "Close the door," he ordered sharply, before launching into a tirade. "That patient of yours has become insufferable, asking endless questions, challenging every decision. It's unacceptable." Maya crossed her arms, standing tall despite the intimidation tactic. "With all due respect, doctor, isn't it important for patients to understand their treatment plans, especially someone like Mr. Thompson who seems genuinely invested in his recovery?" Dr. Caldwell stopped mid-pace, glaring at her. "Invested? Or deliberately trying to undermine me? Either way, I won't tolerate being questioned like some rookie. You need to manage him better, Nurse Johnson, or else." "Or else what?" Maya asked evenly, surprising even herself with her boldness. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, with a dismissive wave, Dr. Caldwell muttered, "Just do your job." As Maya left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. Meanwhile, back in room 304, Mr. Thompson sat gazing out the window, a faint smile playing on his lips. He knew exactly what he was doing and why. Unbeknownst to anyone, Lawrence Thompson III had already begun drafting a letter to the hospital board. His visit to St. Vincent's wasn't just about receiving care. It was about ensuring that care remained compassionate and respectful. for everyone. The rest of the week passed in a blur for Nurse Maya Johnson. Between her regular duties and managing Dr. Caldwell's increasingly volatile behavior, she found herself stretched thin. Yet every time she entered Mr. Thompson's room, she felt a strange sense of calm, a reminder that not everything in life was as chaotic as it seemed. Mr. Thompson continued to engage with both Maya and the medical staff with his characteristic warmth and curiosity. He asked thoughtful questions during rounds, listened intently to explanations, and even shared stories from his own life. Though he never explicitly mentioned his background or intentions, his presence began to subtly shift the atmosphere around him. Nurses who once dreaded dealing with difficult doctors now lingered a little longer in his room, sharing laughter and light-hearted banter. Even some junior doctors softened their tones when speaking to him, perhaps sensing that this patient was unlike any other. But while others warmed to Mr. Thompson, Dr. Caldwell grew colder and more unpredictable. His frustration boiled over into sharp remarks directed at anyone within earshot, especially Maya. During one particularly tense moment, he snapped at her in front of several colleagues. "Nurse Johnson, stop hovering over my patients like you're running the show here. You're here to assist, not interfere." Maya clenched her fist behind her back but kept her voice steady. "I'm simply ensuring Mr. Thompson receives the best care possible, doctor. That's all." Dr. Caldwell opened his mouth to retort but stopped himself, glancing around at the curious faces watching the exchange. With a forced smile, he muttered, "Just do your job," before storming off. Later that evening, Maya returned to Mr. Thompson's room to check his vitals. She found him sitting by the window, gazing at the city lights twinkling below. Sensing her approach, he turned and offered her a kind smile. "You handled that beautifully, ma'am. Takes courage to stand your ground like that." Maya sighed, sinking into the chair beside his bed. "It's hard sometimes, Mr. Thompson. I try to stay professional, but it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough for some people." He nodded thoughtfully. "I imagine it does. But let me tell you something. People notice. They see how hard you work, how much you care. And those who don't—" He paused, his expression turning stern. "Well, they'll have to answer for it eventually." His words sent a shiver down Maya's spine, not out of fear, but because they carried an unspoken promise. For the first time, she wondered if Mr. Thompson's probing questions and calm demeanor weren't just about satisfying his own curiosity. Was he building a case? If so, against whom? The next morning, rumors began swirling through the hospital halls. A member of the board of directors was scheduled to visit St. Vincent's later that week. No one knew why, and speculation ran rampant. Some guessed it had to do with budget cuts. Others whispered about potential layoffs. Only Maya suspected the truth, that Mr. Thompson might be connected to this sudden inspection. Her suspicions deepened when she noticed subtle changes in the way certain staff members behaved. Doctors who usually breezed through rounds started lingering longer in patient rooms, asking follow-up questions and offering reassurances. Nurses tidied up charts with extra care, ensuring every detail was meticulously documented. Even Dr. Caldwell appeared oddly subdued, though his temper still flared unpredictably. On the day of the board members' visit, the hospital buzzed with nervous energy. Staff wore their crispest uniforms, and the waiting area sparkled with cleanliness. As the appointed hour approached, Maya spotted Mr. Thompson being wheeled to the lobby in a wheelchair. Dressed in a neatly pressed robe, he looked every bit the dignified gentleman he truly was. When the board member arrived, a tall woman with silver hair and an authoritative stride, she bypassed the usual formalities and headed straight for Mr. Thompson. Smiling warmly, she shook his hand and leaned in close to whisper something inaudible. Whatever it was made Mr. Thompson chuckle softly. Watching from a distance, Maya exchanged a glance with another nurse. "Do you think—" the colleague began, trailing off uncertainly. "I don't know," Maya replied quietly. "But I think we're about to find out." As the group moved toward a conference room, Dr. Caldwell hurried after them, his face pale. It was clear he hadn't been expecting this turn of events. and feared where it might lead. Little did anyone realize, Lawrence Thompson III wasn't merely observing St. Vincent's operations. He was orchestrating a reckoning, one that would expose cracks in the system and demand accountability from those who refused to treat others with dignity. The conference room at St. Vincent's Hospital was usually a quiet, unassuming space, reserved for staff meetings and administrative discussions. But today, it buzzed with an electric tension as the hospital's senior leadership gathered around the table alongside the visiting board member. At the center of it all sat Mr. Thompson, calm, composed and radiating quiet authority. Dr. Caldwell fidgeted nervously in his seat, glancing repeatedly at the clock on the wall. He had been summoned without explanation, and while he tried to maintain his usual air of confidence, there was an unmistakable edge of unease in his demeanor. Maya stood near the doorway, having been asked by the head nurse to assist if needed. Though she wasn't directly involved in the meeting, her presence gave her a front-row seat to what promised to be a pivotal moment. The silver-haired board member, Ms. Evelyn Hartley, began the session with a brief introduction. "Thank you, all, for joining me today," she said, her voice firm but polite. "I'm here to review certain aspects of patient care at St. Vincent's. Specifically, I'd like to discuss feedback we've received regarding interactions between staff members and patients." A murmur rippled through the room, but no one dared interrupt. Ms. Hartley turned to Mr. Thompson, who nodded slightly before speaking. "As some of you may know, I've spent the past week under your care here at St. Vincent's. Overall, I've seen remarkable dedication from many of your team members." His gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Maya, who felt her cheeks warm under his approving look. "But there have also been troubling incidents that deserve attention." He paused, letting his words sink in. Then, with deliberate calm, he recounted several specific moments, including Dr. Caldwell's repeated dismissals of Maya's input and his condescending remarks made in front of both patients and colleagues. Each example was delivered matter-of-factly, leaving no room for denial or deflection. Dr. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his face growing redder by the second. When Mr. Thompson mentioned the incident where he had humiliated Maya in front of him, Caldwell interjected sharply, "With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, these are internal matters best handled within the hospital. Patients shouldn't concern themselves with staff dynamics." Ms. Hartley raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "On the contrary, Doctor, patient experiences are central to our mission. If someone feels disrespected or undermined during their care, it reflects poorly not only on the individual, but on the institution as a whole." Before Dr. Caldwell could respond, Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his tone softening yet carrying undeniable weight. "Doctor, let me share something with you. Years ago, I worked closely with hospitals like this one, not just reviewing policies, but ensuring they upheld standards of excellence. Respect and collaboration aren't optional, they're foundational. Without them, even the most skilled professionals fail to provide true healing." The room fell silent. Dr. Caldwell stared at Mr. Thompson, realization dawning slowly on his foresee. For the first time, he seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation and the identity of the man sitting across from him. Ms. Hartley took over again, addressing the group. "Based on Mr. Thompson's observations and corroborated reports from other patients, we'll be conducting a thorough review of workplace conduct at St. Vincent's. This includes training sessions, updated protocols, and closer oversight. Moving forward." As the meeting concluded, Dr. Caldwell slumped in his chair, defeated. Outside the room, whispers spread among the staff, each word tinged with disbelief and anticipation. Maya lingered for a moment, watching as Mr. Thompson exchanged a few final words with Ms. Hartley. Their conversation ended with a handshake and a shared smile, one of mutual respect and understanding. Later that afternoon, Maya visited Mr. Thompson in his room. "I wanted to thank you," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "What you did today, it means so much." Mr. Thompson waved off her gratitude with a gentle smile. No thanks necessary, ma'am. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, whether they're wearing scrubs or a white coat. Remember that. As Maya left the room, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of hope, not just for herself, but for everyone who walked through the doors of St. Vincent's. Change was coming, and though it wouldn't happen overnight, the seeds had been planted. Little did anyone realize, however, that the ripple effects of Mr. Thompson's visit were far from over. The reckoning had only begun. In the days following the board meeting, St. Vincent's Hospital underwent a subtle yet undeniable transformation. The ripple effects of Mr. Thompson's observations spread throughout the facility like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. While some staff members greeted the changes with cautious optimism, others, particularly Dr. Caldwell, struggled to adapt. For Dr. Gregory Caldwell, life at the hospital became increasingly difficult. His once unquestioned authority now faced constant scrutiny. Every interaction was monitored closely, and any hint of condescension or disrespect triggered immediate feedback from supervisors. Colleagues who once feared him began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with his abrasive behavior. It wasn't long before rumors circulated about possible disciplinary action, or even termination. Meanwhile, Nurse Maya Johnson found herself at the heart of the hospital's evolving culture. Her resilience in the face of adversity had not gone unnoticed, and she quickly became a role model for other nurses. Senior administrators praised her professionalism during the investigation, citing her as an example of how compassion and integrity could coexist with medical expertise. For the first time in years, Maya felt truly valued, not just as a nurse but as a person. One afternoon, while organizing supplies in the storage room, Maya was surprised by a knock on the open door. She turned to see Ms. Evelyn Hartley standing there, holding a clipboard and smiling warmly. "Nurse Johnson, do you have a moment?" "Of course," Maya replied, stepping out into the hallway. "What can I help you with?" Ms. Hartley gestured toward a nearby bench. "I wanted to personally thank you for your cooperation during this process. Your insights and your courage were invaluable." Maya hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I was only doing what I thought was right." "And that's exactly why we need people like you here," Ms. Hartley said firmly. "We're implementing new training programs focused on workplace respect and collaboration. I'd like you to play a key role in helping shape these initiatives." Maya blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a nurse." "You're more than just anything," Ms. Hartley interrupted gently. "You represent the best of what this hospital stands for. Will you consider it?" After a moment's reflection, Maya nodded. "I'd be honored." As they parted ways, Maya couldn't shake the sense of pride swelling in her chest. For so long she doubted whether her voice mattered, but now she realized it did. More importantly, she understood that change wasn't something handed down from above. It started with individuals willing to stand up for what was right. Back in room 304, Mr. Thompson prepared for discharge. Though his stay had been brief, he left behind a legacy of accountability and hope. As Maya entered to say goodbye, she found him packing the last of his belongings into a small bag. "Well, ma'am," he said with a grin, "looks like my work here is done." "You've done so much for us," Maya said sincerely. "Thank you for everything." Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "No need for thanks, child. Remember, kindness isn't a one-time act, it's a way of life. Keep leading by example, and you'll inspire others to follow suit." With those parting words, Mr. Thompson wheeled himself toward the exit, where a car waited to take him home. As he disappeared through the hospital doors, Maya felt a renewed determination settle over her. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she knew the journey was worth it. Unbeknownst to everyone, however, Mr. Thompson's influence extended beyond St. Vincent's walls. News of his visit reached other hospitals, sparking conversations about workplace dynamics and patient care across the region. Inspired by his actions, healthcare professionals everywhere began reevaluating their own practices, proving that one person's quiet strength could ignite lasting change. But for Maya, the most profound impact lay closer to home. In the weeks that followed, she noticed small but meaningful shifts among her colleagues. Conversations grew more respectful, teamwork flourished, and patients consistently reported feeling heard and cared for. Slowly but surely, the toxic patterns of the past were being replaced by something better. Yet, amidst all the progress, Maya couldn't help but wonder, what would become of Dr. Caldwell? Weeks turned into months, and the changes at St. Vincent's Hospital continued to take root. The training programs Maya helped develop became integral to daily operations, fostering a culture of respect and collaboration. Nurses, doctors, and support staff worked together more seamlessly than ever before, creating an environment where patients felt truly cared for, not just medically, but emotionally as well. But while many embraced the new direction, Dr. Gregory Caldwell remained an outlier. Stripped of his senior privileges and placed on probation, he struggled to adapt to the shifting dynamics. His once commanding presence now felt diminished, replaced by a quiet frustration that simmered beneath the surface. Colleagues avoided him, patients requested other physicians, and even his closest allies distanced themselves. For the first time in his career, Dr. Caldwell found himself alone and forced to confront the consequences of his actions. One rainy afternoon, Maya was surprised to see Dr. Caldwell waiting outside the break room. He looked unusually disheveled, his tie loose and his hair slightly unkempt. When their eyes met, he hesitated before speaking. "Nurse Johnson, may I have a word?" Maya nodded cautiously, stepping aside to let him enter. She had no idea what to expect, but something about his demeanor suggested this wasn't another confrontation. It was a plea. "I wanted to apologize," he began haltingly, avoiding her gaze. "For everything. My behavior toward you and others was unacceptable. I let my ego get in the way of doing what's right, and I've caused harm because of it." The sincerity in his voice caught Maya off guard. She studied him carefully, searching for any trace of insincerity. Finding none, she replied softly, "Apologies aren't easy to give or receive, but they're a start." Dr. Caldwell nodded, exhaling deeply. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to do better. If you're willing, I'd appreciate your guidance. You've shown incredible strength throughout all of this, and I could learn a lot from someone like you." Maya considered his words, weighing the weight of forgiveness against the pain he'd caused. Finally, she spoke. "Change doesn't happen overnight, Doctor. It takes effort, humility, and consistency. But if you're serious about turning things around, I'll support you however I can." Her response seemed to lift a burden from Dr. Caldwell's shoulders. For the first time in months, he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Nurse Johnson. That means more than you know." From that day forward, Dr. Caldwell began making amends, not just with Maya, but with the entire staff. He attended every training session, listened attentively during rounds, and actively sought feedback from colleagues and patients alike. Slowly, people started to notice the shift. Though trust wouldn't return overnight, his willingness to grow earned him a second chance. As the hospital thrived under its renewed focus on compassion and teamwork, Maya often reflected on how far they'd come. Mr. Thompson's visit had been the catalyst for change, but it was the collective effort of everyone involved that sustained it. Even Dr. Caldwell's redemption served as a reminder that growth was possible, even in the most unlikely places. One evening, as Maya prepared to leave for the day, she paused by the window overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, mirroring the hope she felt within. Change wasn't easy, but it was worth fighting for. And though challenges would undoubtedly arise again, she knew they were ready to face them, together. In the distance, a familiar figure walked along the street, leaning on a cane. It was Mr. Thompson, taking his evening stroll as he often did. Catching sight of him, Maya smiled softly. Whether he realized it or not, his quiet strength had transformed not just a hospital, but countless lives. And somewhere, deep down, Maya hoped he knew how grateful they all were.